Hi, and welcome to Nevaeh's Nightmare. Sorry about my little hiatus. College is hard. But today, we're going to be getting back into the swing of things, bringing you a new story. In science fiction films, when aliens come down to Earth, they are often depicted as landing at the White House lawn or other centers of world power. They are very often come with important messages to impart to the world. These include dire warnings that if humanity continues down a certain path, we are doomed to destruction as a species. In 1994, something like this scenario took place. But it didn't happen on the White House lawn or any other center of power. It happened at a small, out-of-the-way school in Zimbabwe. This is the strange case of the Ariel school UFO sighting. In 1994, Zimbabwe was still recovering from a civil war that had ended 14 years earlier. As the British left their colonies in Africa, some white settlers in the country disagreed with this and formed their own state and called it Rhodesia in 1965. This sparked a 15-year struggle between the white settlers and the native Shona population, which ended in 1980 with the agreement with the majority Shona would respect the rights of the white population, and they in turn would respect the rights of the Shona. This agreement paved the path for independence for the country under the name Zimbabwe. Although this war was in the past, in 1994, some tensions still remained in the country. Ariel School was a private school just outside the capital of the country, Harare. Most of the students that went there were children of government officials and other upper-class people that worked in the capital. In 1994, when this incident took place, most of the children that were there were white, but there were also many Shona children and other Asian, meaning people of Indian descent, children that attended there as well. The school was founded in 1991, and the children were mostly of elementary school age. The highest grade was 7th grade, so the children that were involved in the sighting were all between the ages of 6 and 12 years old. On September 14, 1994, there was a UFO sighting all over South Africa. Many people saw giant fireballs in the sky that were descending towards the Earth. The government interpreted this as a meteor shower, but many people called the national radio station in Zimbabwe, reporting what they saw. This sparked a UFO mania in the press of the country, and UFOs were on everyone's mind throughout the region. 2 days later, on September 16th, the children at Ariel School had just started recess while the teachers were holding a meeting inside the school. All of a sudden, the children noticed that there were lights in the sky that seemed to be getting closer to the ground. Many of the children stated later that the lights were coming from a solid craft that landed on the outskirts of the school grounds. The children approached the craft, and 4 humanoid beings came out of it. They described the beings as small with large eyes that wore some kind of tightly fit clothing. The entities approached the children and they heard words beamed into their minds using some form of telepathy. The aliens told the children that humanity was ruining the planet, and if they didn't change our ways, we would become extinct. They also told the children that the technology had gotten out of control and was a danger as well. Then the aliens got back into their craft and left. After the strange beings left, the school erupted into chaos. Many of the children were traumatized by what they had seen and heard, and many were also crying. The teachers were concerned about what had happened and couldn't figure out what had bothered the kids so much. 62 of their students were now saying that they just had a close encounter from another world, and the adults didn't quite know what to make of it. The teachers didn't believe the kids when they told them what they had experienced, but they were concerned that perhaps more earthly intruders had come to the school grounds and had attempted to do their students harm. When the children came home, they told their parents what had happened to them. Word soon got out, and the national radio station reported on what the children had witnessed. Because of the media, UFO researcher Cynthia Hind and journalist Tim Leach went to the Ariel School to investigate what had occurred there. Leach was affected by what the children related to him, stating, "I could handle war zones, but I could not handle this." Hind interviewed the children, and when she compared their stories, they were all remarkably consistent. The children also drew pictures for Hind of what they had seen. The incident soon came to the attention of psychiatrist Dr. John Mack. Dr. Mack had become interested in the phenomena of alien abduction, and by 1994 he had published a book about his research into it. Mack had become convinced that what people were experiencing was real to them and not some kind of psychosis. Many of his colleagues at Harvard were convinced that Mack had lost his mind and had actually started proceeding to remove his tenure. Mack fought back by showing that there was a therapeutic aspect to the services he provided the abductees. In November, John Mack traveled to Zimbabwe to interview the students involved in the Ariel case. He interviewed all 62 of the children and found that their statements were consistent. He did notice, however, that some of the children reported seeing just the craft land, and others saw the beings but did not hear them, while others said the beings relayed to them their environmental message. It was the message that the entities gave to the students that became the front and center in Mack's interviews with the children. One older student was told something was going to happen and that pollution must not be. When asked by Mack what the aliens' message was to the world, one 11-year-old girl stated that, "I think they want people to know we're actually making harm on this world, and we mustn't get too technologied." Yet another student stated that the entities told him the world would end because people were not taking care of the planet. Mack left Zimbabwe fully convinced that the 62 children had seen was real and that they were visibly affected by their experience. Because of Mack, the Ariel case would receive attention from all over the world and is considered one of the most documented close encountered cases. So what happened at the Ariel school in September 1994? Had space aliens really traveled thousands of light years just to deliver a dire environmental message to school children and then just leave? Were there other explanations for what had happened? Skeptics have looked at the Ariel school case and have seen some problems with it. First, they point out that the fireball that appeared over the skies of southern Africa 2 days before the incident was just being the booster rocket from a satellite launch that was re-entering Earth's atmosphere. Remember, this is what caused the UFO mania in Zimbabwe in the first place. Skeptics point out that the children at school would have all been well aware of what was happening, and they could have concocted some type of story to gain attention. Skeptics also point to the problems with the way the children were interviewed by Hind and Mack. They point out that the original interviews done by Hind there is next to no mention of the environmental message that came so much a part of the story later. They point out that the aspect was only mentioned by the students once Mack became involved in the case. They look at Mack's own involvement in environmental causes as proof that he was somehow coaching the children to come up with this message. The children were interviewed separately by both Mack and Hind, but often other children were in the room as well. Many of the skeptics believe that this allowed the children to concoct a story together or just tell the researchers what they wanted to hear. Other ideas have been put forward by skeptics to explain these strange events. Explanations vary, including that children were remembering a puppet show about the dangers of AIDS, and they were conflated with that of the UFO buzz in the media. Some said that it was a strange experiment being done by the school's staff, or a prank pulled by the older kids on the younger kids. Some have even put forward the idea that the kids saw a janitor working on the outskirts of the school and mistook him for an alien. Some even dismiss the Ariel school incident as a case of mass hysteria, and point out that since 1994, mass hysteria incidents at schools in Africa have been on the rise. These are interesting points that are put forth by the skeptics, but they do not account for other aspects of this case, mainly in the fact that many of the students maintain that what they saw was 100% real. They are also still visibly affected by what they saw and experienced, and many still exhibit some PTSD from the incident. They have spoken about the incident in several documentaries over the years, and they have never wavered from their stories. In 2023, Netflix released a series called Encounters, with the second episode being about the Ariel school. In it, they interviewed many of the students that were there, and they all maintained their stories. One of the former students, named Dylan, stated that he faked the whole thing in an effort to get out of Shona class by convincing the students that a shiny rock seen in the field was a UFO. He stated that the mass hysteria took hold and it went from there. It should be said that Dylan's claims are new and many others deny his story. There is perhaps another explanation to what happened. Cynthia Hine thought because of all of the different cultural backgrounds of the students at the school, that not all of them would have interpreted the beings as extraterrestrials. She pointed out that some of the children thought that the visitors were Tikaloshis, which were beings from Shona folklore. Maybe these beings that lived beside humans for a very long time were the ones that delivered the message. After all, as nature spirits, they would have more at stake if we ruined the environment than space aliens would. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Make sure to drop a like, drop a subscribe, and let me know what you think. Do you really think that these kids encountered an extraterrestrial or a UFO or an alien or even something from their folklore, or if it was all mass hysteria? Let me know what you think down in the comments. Thank you for watching.